and this is my treasured testimony. So there's two scriptures that I cling to. One is Joshua 1:9, and it reads, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." And the reason why I cling to this is because every time things get tough in my life, or there's a storm, or something's trying to distract me, I just remember that he says be bold and courageous, and that he's commanded me to do this, and so it just keeps me going. And there's another scripture that which you'll see in my testimony, has been huge on my journey, on my health journey and my weight loss journey. And it's 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20. "Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own? For you were bought at a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." All right, so where do I begin with my testimony? So I was thinking about it, and I was praying about it, for the last few days, like where the Lord wanted to bring me back to. And, it always comes back to those moments of, really speaking into my inner child, like really going back to little Patty, and really bringing me back to about 8 years old. And there was a lot of, things that I couldn't control in my household. My dad was very controlling. There was a lot of, verbal abuse and everything going inside the house. And it was just really difficult for me to deal with it. And because God made me like a really empathetic person. Like I can feel everything when other people are going through it. So whenever, he treated my mom bad or anything like that, or even if he treated us or anyone around me, it was like it affected me so much. And it's funny that, God is really bringing this up, because I don't really feel like I've even really dealt with or really talked about like that. Like I've kind of talked about it, but I haven't really talked about it. And I just really go back to like Patty inside that house, feeling like I was like in a prison, because when you're a child, there's only so much you can do. You can't, well, I guess I could have ran away, but I didn't, right? And at 8 years old, what are you gonna do? So I remember just, God bringing me back to this vision of like wanting to leave my house, and just looking through the window and not being able to escape. And, as I grew up and, I became, at one point I was thinner like I am now, but as time went on, I gained a lot of weight, and I always thought that it was just me being overweight, that I didn't have like willpower, which I know doesn't exist anymore. But as the years went by, maybe a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago or so, God started revealing to me that food had a stronghold over me. And so going back to as a child, I realized that that's where it came from. Like God revealed that to me. And so he said that as an 8-year-old, because I can see from 7 years old, like my second grade picture, I was thin. Then my third grade picture, I was chunky, right? And so, everybody just thought that I just liked food, just like any other kid that likes a lot of food, that's, but when he brings me back to this obsession with food. So it was more like an addiction, but I didn't know that it was that. And so I remember like clinging in the window and just, asking my brother, I'm the youngest of 5, my oldest brother, he's still the nicest person ever. And no matter how much I begged him, if I begged him for a doll, he would get me a doll. But if I begged him for French fries, he would get me French fries. And while he thought he was doing me good, it wasn't doing me good, because nobody ever thought that I had a problem with food. Everybody just thought that I just loved food, right? Or loved French fries, because that was like the one thing. I was a very picky kid with food when I was little. So, people just thought that's all I would eat, right? And so nobody ever thought that I had an issue with food, because even now it's like not a common thing to talk about that people have eating disorders or issue with food. But a few years ago, God really started speaking to me, because I was getting desperate, like for change. I was like, okay, why am I not able to get over this? Like I would lose a little bit of weight and then always gain it back, and then lose a little bit of weight and always gain it back. And it wasn't because I didn't have the desire to lose weight or I didn't want to get healthy. It was all here. Like I was tormented in my mind, And so a few years ago, he started saying the word binge eating disorder. And I didn't even know what as a nurse, I've been a nurse for 15 years. And even as a nurse, like I knew of eating disorders, but I never really dove into them. Like that's not my specialty. I'm a pediatric nurse. So I started asking the Lord, like, just start revealing to me. So he started like, putting like books in front of me. Like I remember going to a Salvation Army and he put this book in front of me by Janine Roth and Women, Food, and God. And that was like the first ever, book I had ever read that put God, food, and women, like the issues that women have with food, like eating disorders and things like that. So then God's like started to reveal to me, maybe you should go to like Overeaters Anonymous and, things like that. And I went to a meeting and it just didn't feel right, And I don't even know if I was led there, like thinking back now, I don't think I was led there by God. I was kind of desperate for any answer, or maybe he did lead me there, but it wasn't the answer. So as time went on, I just kept being hungry for like more answers. And because after I was saved, like back in 2012, going back to, when I was in a severe depression and like severe panic attacks, I remember leaving, I had to get out of work. Like I couldn't work because of my severe panic attacks. So I stayed out of work for about 2.5 months in order to get myself healthy again. Like I was like not functioning at all. And of course, I took the medical route-ish, because I wasn't saved at the moment. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the doctor. I mean, I had to use wisdom at that moment. I went to the doctor, I got on some medication, I went to a therapist, I did the things that you should do, in those type of situations, like severe situations. But in that moment, I remember going, I wasn't living with my parents anymore. This was before I was married. We were still dating, me and my husband. And I went back to live with my parents back in 2012. And I remember just one night, this depression and the panic attacks were like so severe. And I was just desperate. And I remember crying out to God. And I knew of God, but I was raised Catholic. So I didn't have a relationship with him. And my husband now, he tried to talk to me about God, and I was just always like, no, like that's not, like I don't need to know anything about God, because that's the way my dad was. He was always so closed off to hearing about God. And so I was like, no, I don't need to know anything about God. I don't need to know anything. I'm fine. Like I'm good, So thinking back now, God had to bring me to the pit, He brings us from the pit, right? And in that moment, like crying out in the middle of the night, I had this like, I can't even, to this day, I tell myself I don't ever want to feel that type of pain again. Like the pain of like not wanting to live anymore, the pain of wanting to take your own life, the pain of like desperation, like the rock bottom is pretty much what people call it, right? And not all of us have to go to like our near-death experience to feel that way. I felt that way at that moment. And I remember just calling out to God. I think I was listening to like a Joyce Meyer video. I don't even know what she said, but she said something. And then maybe she said, cry out to God, or all you have to say is Jesus, And I remember in that moment just crying out to him, and just, he saved me in that moment. And I know a lot of people always say like, oh, I got saved in a church, or I got saved. No, he saved me right then and there. I might have not prayed the sinner's prayer, but I was like, I'll do anything. Like, just save me. Like, I can't do this anymore, And he just gave me the strength and lifted me up in that moment. And I remember after that, just, going back to therapy and telling myself that was it. Like, I was going to do what it took to get healthy, in every area of my life. So, and that he was going to be my strength from that moment forward. And so I remember my therapist saying like, you need to get healthy, and you need to start, eating healthier, and because I was really overweight, and you need to start exercising and everything, but go outside because you have your panic attacks. It's not going to be like inside or anything like that, like go walking, swimming, things like that. So I remember like I went back to work, I started feeling better with the medication. I slowly got off of it, the medication, I didn't want to be on it for a long time. And that's when like God, started introducing me to the at-home workouts that I do now, and just the healthier like environment and just things like that. But then, I would, like I said, I would lose weight, I would lose weight, have some success in that, but then I would always gain it all back, plus some sometimes, when things would get hard in my life. And especially during that time back in like 2015, when I had a really, really severe, thing happen, with my husband, and it really sent us into like a very traumatic experience for him. But because I took it on, I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to support him, because I was never taught how to support my husband in that way, like through a really difficult experience. And because I thought that he would deal with it just like I dealt with my own depression, I ended up wanting to save him instead of learning how to help him. And so in that, I turned to food again, because I didn't know how to help him. I felt out of control. And that's when God said, this is where all your food issues started, was because you felt so out of control in your house, in your home as a child, that food was the only thing that you could control. So you're like, okay, if I can't have any control, I'm going to control what I put in my mouth. And it just became, an issue. And yeah, in my teen years, I rebelled with other things, sex, alcohol, drugs, things like that. But then when that all ended, here was food again, right in smack in my face. And we all know that we can't live without food, and that food is everywhere. That temptation is everywhere, And so God really had to like bring me to a place of like, that it wasn't about losing weight. It wasn't about just eating healthier. It was really about surrendering to him and going to him instead of food for my comfort, And so the reason why I want to talk about this, and I'm so passionate about this and about women, about, talking to this about women, and not just women, because if any man is watching this, this could be for you too, But I really, really want to speak into your life right now. And if you're suffering with a food addiction or a binge eating disorder or anorexia or bulimia or any type of emotional eating where you feel like you're going to food instead of God, I'm telling you right now, you're not alone. And I thought I was alone for so long, and I thought I was the only one that was suffering. And because I've been open with my testimony, and because God has given me victory in this area, I've lost over 116 pounds now, and that all was spiritual weight, like all of it. It was just hiding in a physical, body. And so, I want people to know that they're not alone. I want women to know that they're not alone. And now that I share my testimony so openly and so transparent, like my purpose, well, God's purpose, our purpose together, is really to just share this testimony in hopes that, the church will be more open and more vulnerable about this subject. Because we talk about addictions, we talk about, shopping and gambling and pornography and alcohol and drugs and everything. But we have to know that food is just as much of a stronghold as anything else. And this is not to say, that anybody needs to be condemned or ashamed for being overweight or for eating a cupcake or cake or anything like that, because it's not. Like, I don't ever want, to share on, whether on social media or in front of people or here, I don't ever want you to think that, oh, look at me, I lost 116 pounds and now I'm perfect and, I don't struggle, because let me tell you, I do struggle. And I just don't struggle like I used to, you know what I mean? Like, I still fall and I still slip, because we're all sinners and we all fall short of the glory of God. But His grace is sufficient for us. And He's made perfect in our weakness. And so that's what's changed in my life, is that I don't condemn myself anymore when I fall. You know what I mean? Like, I probably get down on myself because I'm like, okay, it's never a condemnation anymore though. It's always like, you know how you feel when you get like this, like, but it's more of a pep talk versus like, you're so stupid, or you're so ugly, or why did you do that to yourself? See, now you messed up. Now you're just a failure. Might as well quit everything. Like, I mean, how bad do we talk to ourselves? And I'm being nice right now about the way I'm talking, okay? I can just imagine how bad we talk to ourselves, how I used to talk to myself, you know? I mean, I would say I can't, there's no way I could give up food. I mean, God showed me, you know, when back in 2018, when I was really ready, he gave me a word going into 2018, and he said heal, or healing, right? And I ran with that, and I didn't know what he meant, because in those, you know, in the last couple of years, I was, like I said, I was already, you know, really hungry for like an answer, like what's really going on, you know? And then at my church, they were doing a support group for the first time, and it was on conquering eating disorders. And God said, I did this for you, because I was like desperate at that moment. Like, I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't feel like I fit in at Overeaters Anonymous. Like, it just didn't feel like the answer. You know what I mean? And while Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous might be the answer for somebody, like, I felt like something I needed something more intimate, and something that dealt like with the root issue. That support group was more for me, because the booklet in there, not the booklet, the workbook, really made me dive into like the root cause of where it all came from. And I never realized like that the way I view God, no, the way I viewed my parents, like my mom and my dad, had a lot to do with the way I viewed God, and the way I trusted God, the way I judged God, or the way I felt he judged me, things like that. And just how, you know, it was never about the food, and it never will be about the food. It's just a way to numb ourselves, you know? And so it's just like alcohol, and just like, you know, sex, and just like anything that you use besides going to God for comfort. And so in that support group, like, he really, really just brought me to a place of complete surrender, like into an understanding of like, wow, I actually have an answer for this now. Like, it's not just, I don't feel crazy anymore. I don't feel like, you know, I'm running around in circles like in a hamster wheel. Like, there's actually an answer, and there's actually a reason why I am the way I am. And I felt like my identity was stolen. And thinking back on it now, you know, back at that age, I mean, my grandma, you know, passed away already, but at some point around that age that I was talking about, like 7, 8, you know, remember I was brought up Catholic. My grandma started she was Christian, and so was like my uncle and my aunt. And they would go to a local Christian church. And I remember her taking me, and she would take me to Sunday school, and I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved it. And thinking back on it now, what I felt was the Holy Spirit. And like I said, my dad was a Catholic, but he was totally a sin. You know, I mean, we're all sinners, but I'm saying like he was not living, you know, a holy life or anything like that. And so, you know, he took, anytime I wanted to go, they were like, if he found out that I went, he would be like, you're not going there, you're not going to that church. And I'm like, okay, but I want to go. And I remember, you know, that, and God really brought me back there. And then going back to that, you know, going back to when I was 8 years old, like, I realized that that's where it all started. Like, God was about to start doing something in me, and he was about to start doing something in me, and it all stopped. Then again, at about 12 years old, a neighbor right next door, they fostered their niece and nephew, okay? And the niece was 16 or 17 years old at the time. And her boyfriend were Christian. And they took me. Why would they take a 12-year-old to a church? Like, she must have known something, you know, because why would they hang around? Why would a 17-year-old hang around with a 12-year-old? Like, I don't understand that. And that was another move of God. Like, they took me to the church. They must have felt like they needed to take me. And again, I felt the Holy Spirit during worship, and I loved everyone. Everybody was like, brother, sister. And I was like, why is everybody calling each other brother and sister? Like, what is that? You know, I had never even experienced that before. But I loved it. I mean, I couldn't explain it at that age, right? And I remember coming back, and, you know, like an innocent little girl, like, telling my parents, oh my gosh, I loved going to the church. And then I don't think my parents knew. They just let me go with her. And I think my mom knew, but my dad didn't know. And then again, boom, he shut it down, you know? And thinking back on it now, it was the enemy, you know, shutting it down. And again, I know that God was about to do something, but it was stopped again. And so if I see like the progression of where it happened, it was like it, you know, the enemy used food again. Like, so he started using like food, and then during my rebellious years in my teens, it was other things. And then when he knew I was out of that, he used food again and try to use that in my weaknesses. And every time that I would go through something really, really difficult, it would get even worse, you know? And when God really, really brought me out of, you know, really waking me up and really wanting like a real change was after I had my son. I had a really bad pregnancy. The longest labor ever, like over 60 hours. Yes, I said 60 hours, okay? And then I had severe postpartum hemorrhage, so I almost bled out. I remember God, you know, finally bringing the baby out. I didn't think I was gonna survive after all those hours, and you know, nothing went as we had planned, obviously. And then I started bleeding out. I wouldn't stop bleeding, and in that moment, like, I started praying to God, because I'm like, I mean, I was praying the whole time, but like in that moment even more, because as a nurse, I know when they have you sign consent, it said possible hysterectomy, which is taking out your uterus, and once you don't have a uterus, you can't have another baby anymore. And so just seeing that like sent me into more of a panic, and this is while you're bleeding, so it's like, okay, you know. And then I'm over here thinking the worst case scenario, because again, like a nurse, I know what can happen, and I know that women have died during labor and because of things like that. And so the whole time I just was praying, and then I ended up with an infection because they kept putting their hands in there, and I had fever, and just thing after thing after thing, and like nothing was going right. And I remember just you know, really praying to God in that moment to just like heal me. And then, you know, after I had the baby, it was like, okay, I have the baby, and he's, you know, he's healthy, and you know, I'm supposed to be grateful, but yet, you know, everybody forgot. Like once my family came, everybody was like, oh, okay, you're fine, even though I almost died, you know. And like, honestly, I think that sent me into like a depression, and I think that caused my postpartum anxiety. And so for the next few months, up until maybe about 8 months postpartum, I dealt with severe postpartum anxiety, to the point where I had to go see a therapist again. And I literally went through so many times where I literally just wanted to run out the door and not come back, because I felt like I couldn't be, you know, the enemy was like giving me lies that I wasn't going to be a good enough mom, that he'd be better off with my husband, and that I was better off not being there, or even not being alive. And I saw those, and this is in the midst of my journey of being, I had already been really close to God, and so I didn't know why all this was happening to me again. And I realized that was just another attack on me to stop like the things that God had called me to do already in my destiny. And I feel like he almost took me out, because I literally felt like I was never going to come back from there, you know. And so during that time, that's when my binge eating even got even worse, you know. At the beginning, maybe not, but like as time went on, it just got worse and worse and worse. And to the point where, again, I didn't feel like I was going to God like I should, like before. And I just couldn't deal. And so it was just easier. So I thought easier for me to go to food instead of God. And as, you know, as I had women around me praying for me and lifting me up, and you know, going to therapy, and my husband praying for me, and you know, supporting me, and thank God for him, and helping me out so much with my son, and just thank God he brought me a patient man, because during that time my son wasn't sleeping like at all, and like it was making me even feel more crazy, because lack of sleep plus anxiety plus depression is just not a good combination at all. But there was something in me, just like how years ago he brought me out of that severe depression and anxiety, and he saved me. Again, I felt like I needed to be reborn again. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I know some people think that once you're saved, like that's it. And so a lot of times, no. A lot of times we can totally backslide. Maybe not completely, but we need to be saved again. And like, you know, reminded of our salvation, and reminded of who we are in Christ, and reminded that we do have purpose. And so in those moments, that's when I chose again to fight. I chose to fight for myself, for my identity, for my purpose, and for my family. And and so I didn't want to go back to work, and so I went back to work, begrudgingly, but I went back to work. I wanted to stay home with my son, but I didn't, and slowly but surely, God started working in me. But then I had him in June 2017, and then I went back to work in February, and that's right when I started the support group for the eating disorder. So I felt like all that was like right on time. Like as I was healing from the postpartum anxiety, he brought the support group, and then he knew I was ready. He knew I was like open to it, because not even a month before would I have been ready. It's like God's perfect timing. You have no idea how perfect God's timing is. We think that we're suffering, and lo and behold, He's already gone ahead of us, and He's already working. And even in our deepest, darkest cries, He hears us. He hears everything that we want, and it's just crazy to me. Sometimes it's like we can't even wrap our minds around the things that God has for us. Like we can't even now, the things that He's done in my life, like it's only because I did ask for them, and I was diligent about my prayers, and I was diligent about letting Him know exactly, what I wanted. And women out there, I just want you to know, like, there's nothing too small or too big for God. Like, you can ask for what you want. You can be as specific as you want. You can say, you know what, this is not the group for me. I need this type of environment for help. I need this, that's what I asked for. And when He brought me that support group, like, that's exactly what I needed. And even the women there were so surprised that I was so open and so ready for change. And I was like, you don't have no idea. Like, I literally just told this to one of the women that was in that group a few days ago, because she was surprised how open I was in the group, and how ready I was for the healing, and how all this has transpired since then. And I said, but you don't understand. It was a process. It was a process of years before that, So it wasn't like it just happened out of nowhere. It was like, it was already about to happen. It was already years of crying out to God, and asking, and being lost, and asking for Him to reveal my purpose, and to reveal like why I was going through all this, and why I was suffering so much. And so in those moments, like I was already like just hungry for change. I mean, of how He brought it, like, because I said yes to His word, to the healing in my life. I said, okay, I don't know what you're gonna bring into my life. I don't know how you're gonna do it, but you're going to heal me, And so He said, all you have to do is say yes, and say yes, and say yes again and again and again. And so with that group, I was very open and transparent. I didn't fight it at all. And that's one tip that I can give you all, is if you truly want change in your life, and you truly want God to heal you, that you have to make that choice to say yes, to surrender, and before I didn't know what surrender really meant, but really it's just, God, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. Like literally, like giving all of you to Him, and just saying, like, I know I've given you other parts of my life, and I'm speaking to Christian women right now, because I know most of you are going to be the ones who see this. We tend to pick and choose what we want to give to God, but then we don't give certain parts of Him. And He wants all of us. He wants all of us. Like every single drop, every single trauma, every single tear, every single worry, every single thing that you're going through, He wants all of it. And He doesn't want to be replaced with food, or social media, or TV, or even ministry. He's really been speaking to me about that, and that's something that He really had to really deal with me on too. It's like when He started working in my life, He started saying like, okay, I know you like to do this, I know you like to serve here, you like to serve there, but that was a part of your life right now, and now I need you to go somewhere else. And sometimes you really have to listen to God, and just really listen to where he's leading you to go, even if it hurts, because even if it's uncomfortable. And this is where I want you to really pay attention. And this is where a lot of people don't really understand, is that how can my food issues or your weight issues or your or you surrendering, like losing weight, things like that, how does this have to do with God? And like, honestly, when God started speaking to me, he said that it all has to do with me, like not just everything. And I've actually been really mind blown, because a lot of women, especially Christian women, actually are surprised when I say that you have to surrender this part of your life to God too. Like, this is something you have to actually pray for. It's not just, let me pray for my children, let me pray for my husband and our marriage, which are all important, right? Don't get me wrong. But this needs to be an important part of your life. Like, I'm praying for my health. Lord, give me strength to, run the race. And what he's really, really called me to, and now I'm being really clear about the vision, is that I know that he's given me victory in this area, because he wants me to do the things that he has planned for my life, right? And I have to be at my best. And so he's calling not just me, but he's telling me to tell women that, he wants you healthy. He wants you at your best. He doesn't want you with ailments and with pain everywhere. He doesn't want you unhealthy. He wants you healthy because he wants you to run the full race. Sometimes we can, stop running the race prematurely because of actions that we've taken, and so he's really just calling me to really speak out about this and just really start letting women know that they can explore this area. Like, it doesn't have to be from one end to the other, because I want to remind you once again that this took years. Right now, like, I just started a Bible book study on this book Full by Asherita Chuchu. It's Ciu is her last name, separate. It's on Amazon, and it's full, the satisfaction, feeling full and satisfied with Jesus, or I forget. But it's called Full, Full. And that book, it's completely scriptural based, and it really opened my eyes, because she let me know that the author, she dealt with the same thing. Hers was more with sugar. Mine was just any food, really. But unfortunately, I love food, okay? I still love food. I still eat everything. I just don't eat it all the time and with balance and, all that. But, she revealed to me that it was a stronghold. Addiction equals stronghold. And so that's where the change happened, is where I realized where God really took me, and he convicted me. So it was in a loving way. It wasn't in a condemning way, like, you need to stop, because it was like, okay, Patty, that's it. Like, you suffered long enough, you ignored this long enough. You knew that you could have came to me for a while, because I didn't know I could come to him before. But now you can. And you can rest in me. And you can, I'm going to heal you. And I'm going to heal every broken part inside of you. And while it may take years, because there's layers and layers, like, I promise that I'm never going to leave you. I'm never going to forsake you. And so that's really my mission now, is to pay that forward to other women, to reveal to them that they are worthy, and they are worthy of a healthy life, and they are worthy of more than they feel that they deserve, because what I see is that it's not about the weight. It's really what they're masking, which is whatever trauma, pain, anger, resentment, bitterness, unforgiveness, like all of that. God is telling you that your body is a temple, and God really, he doesn't say it in a condemning way. He's saying that he gave up his only son. He paid a price for our sins, and he didn't want us to treat our body in a way that doesn't honor him. And so that's really what I've ran with these past couple of years, is no matter what, he is going, no matter what, I want to honor him with my body. you know. And while I may slip and I'm not perfect, because I'm never gonna be perfect, only Jesus is perfect. That is what keeps me going, is really just honoring him and me being the best person that I can be every single day and moving forward. I was lost, I was broken, I was suicidal, I was hopeless, and you know, I had no identity, I had no voice, and he redeemed all that for me. He gave me a voice, he gave me purpose, he gave me my destiny back. So being a daughter of the King to me is knowing that I have been forgiven of all my sins, and that I am completely loved and accepted by Christ, and that I can live a life of complete freedom and complete healing in his name. Alright ladies, so if you want to follow me in my journey, or if you're interested in changing your life with your health or nutrition, or if you're suffering with any binge eating disorder, emotional eating, or anything like that, you can follow me on Facebook under PattyMVega. On Instagram, it's the same thing. Both my pages are public. I share very, very openly. I'm very transparent in there, so you can DM me in there on either Instagram or Facebook. You'll see my face like this, smiling.